going live. And yes, we are live. I'm here with my new friend Connor. How you doing, Connor?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm happy to meet you. And we met on Twitter a while ago, and
Yep.
I'm excited to learn about, the Germanic stuff and all that. We were talking before going live.
Right.
But
Yeah.
before we do that, I just want to hear about you, how you were raised. If you're comfortable talking about, just touch on the highlights of your journey. How did
Mhm.
you come to your particular worldview, your faith journey? Talk us through all that good stuff.
Well, I was originally raised kind of Catholic.
Ah,
My grandparents, very much Catholic, but my parents not so much. My mom vaguely Christian spiritual. My dad completely lapsed. He agrees with the cultural, but not so much a religious kind of guy. Um, and so that was all throughout my childhood. And I did go to a Catholic school up until uh, middle of elementary, and then I switched over to public school, and then graduated from that. Um, and but well, about midway through high school was when I really started to get in back into my faith, um, and get back in touch with my religion. And you know, it wasn't until like that was just a regular sort of thing, and then it wasn't until I had read the Heliand, which is a very early uh, Catholic retelling of the gospel
oh yeah.
through a lens of the sort of poetic style of Germanic peoples, that started to consider how we've lost a lot of enculturation. And that's sort of what led me to
Ah,
starting Christian Soothsayings, and then the
ah.
Fellowship of Germanic Christians and whatnot.
Oh, you read it in a translation, an English translation, or?
Yeah,
Oh, okay, okay.
yes.
It was originally written in
It
German?
was originally written in Old Saxon,
Ooh.
um,
Ah.
which I can't read.
Okay, okay. Are you planning on
Yeah,
learning
but
any Germanic languages? I mean, English is basically a semi-Germanic language anyway.
well, it is foundationally, it is, and I don't know any personally. I don't know any other languages. I'd like to learn German. I actually have um, some books over there in German,
Oh yeah?
uh, so I'd like to learn it. But I on my Twitter, you'll most often see I'll write in Anglish, so to speak,
Ah.
which is a form of English where you get rid of all of the Latin, all of the Roman, all of the
Oh,
French,
no
right?
way.
Yeah.
Oh, where can
So
I learn
that's
this?
so it actually it very much sounds like normal English. It's
Uh,
just, I guess, a little bit like an idiot, because we associate those
the
we
limited,
associate
reduced vocabulary, right?
well, actually, it's not even that reduced.
Okay.
It's just we associate the Latin words, the French words, we associate it with being fancy,
Ah,
because the King of England spoke French after the Norman invasion in 1066.
cool. Cool.
So there's a
Can you
whole
speak an
linguistic.
example phrase to me in
Um,
English?
well, if I wanted to speak in a plain English, it would be rather hard to tell how much asunder it is from everyday Norman English.
So that was
That
all
that,
English?
that was all
Okay,
English.
so just one word stood out,
One
asunder,
word, which is asunder,
instead
which
of
just
different.
means different.
Wow, that's cool. Are there clubs where people get together and dress up and they talk in English?
I don't know about dressing up, but I know a lot of my fellows with me in the like Fellowship of Germanic Christians, for example. We're all very interested in English, um, just because it gets us more in touch with that heritage. Um, and then aside from that, there is a very large community online in general.
Ah,
There's like Reddits, Discords,
okay.
Twitters. There's
Cool.
actually a whole news agency dedicated to telling the news in English. It's called the English Times. They actually follow me on Twitter. So
No way. That
yeah,
is so cool. Why is it taking me so long to discover this this culture? It's so cool. Is there
yeah,
a,
I certainly find it interesting, and that's like one thing that I'm like I want to, I guess, promote or
yeah,
outspeak if I wanted to
yeah.
say it.
Well,
And
the one negative would be that people would be, oh, you're a white supremacist because you like the Germanic peoples of the Northlands.
yeah, yeah,
Oh,
that is one thing. But actually, surprisingly, the English community overall, like, with my circle, it's more so specifically Germanic people, but with the community overall, actually, there is a surprising amount of diversity and, a lot of different people, because it is a form of linguistics, and, that draws people from all different walks of life.
of course, of course. And you don't have any hard rules about excluding groups of people or anything like that, obviously.
Well, like for example, like the Fellowship of Germanic Christians is, an organization that I run, and for that, obviously,
You have
you
to be
have to
Christian.
be a Germanic Christian.
Ah,
But it's just to sort of like
focus the group.
keep those bonds and that heritage and that patrimony, and so we can further revive and promote that enculturation.
Yeah, 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 yeah. My friend watches Red Ice Media. It's like some kind of Scandinavian group that's very proud of their whiteness or something. I don't know. But there are a lot of groups like this that are starting to take pride in their heritage, even though they're white. And
Hmm.
I don't have a problem with that, that's
Yeah.
fine. I mean, I'm as white as you can get, right? So like I don't have I don't have a problem with white people. Like I mean, no, it's not on trend, my position, but a lot of people do have a problem with white people. I don't, but I don't have a problem with any peoples. I think they're all interesting.
No,
They're
me
all
neither.
interesting.
Like we're all uh there was a Bible verse, and I can't remember it, but it's essentially, God made all of the nations and the bounds and the times of their habitation. And you know, we are, God made these nations the way that they are. And so there's no reason why we shouldn't take pride in God's creation.
Absolutely.
That's the
Yeah.
way I look at it, and that's equal for all different peoples. My buddy, he just recently wrote an article discussing general enculturation within the Catholic Church and how that, like Germanic Christianity, relates back to Native American Christianity, and how there's a lot of similarities between the ways that we enculturate our Germanic heritage and how the Native Americans have been enculturated before and now.
Ah. I'm assuming you're old enough to drink. Are you old enough to drink alcohol?
Yeah,
Okay. You look very young. But I'm in Canada, by the way. I don't know where you are. Where are you geographically?
Alberta.
No way. Oh, okay. Yeah, so you're definitely old enough to drink then. So, yeah, because the drinking age is what, 18 or something?
18, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But well, because the reason I'm asking is because Oktoberfest is a very Germanic festival, and
Yes.
I've been to the biggest one outside of Germany, and I don't know if you know where that is. The biggest one outside of Germany.
Is that in the Midwest?
It's in Kitchener-Waterloo, Ontario.
Huh.
Yeah,
I didn't even know.
yeah, huge German population. If you ever come this way,
Yeah.
out east, check out Kitchener-Waterloo. They have the Mennonite community also. I don't know if
Mm.
you're familiar with the Amish, the
I'm
Mennonite.
very much I'm familiar with all of the Anabaptists. I find them fascinating.
Interesting people. Yeah,
Hmm.
very interesting people. So yeah, I have a question now about your attire. Like you look very put together and neat and proper. I just got a comment on BitChute today. Someone's saying, "Oh, you look like a slob. Why don't you sit up straight and put a shirt on and whatever?" But I'm from Generation X, so I'm just a slob. But
My dad's the same
why
way.
are you so proper? Is it because you're conservative, or is it because you were raised this
Well,
way, or what?
It's interesting.
It looks good.
I
It looks
used to
good, by the way.
dress. Pardon?
It looks good.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Well, I used to dress, also like a slob. But it wasn't really until I guess I would say around the same time I started,
Acculturating
reapproaching
yourself.
faith.
Acculturating yourself.
Um, I noticed Asian people dress like white people, and
Uh,
I'm like, wait a second. If Asian people are allowed to dress like white people, why can't I, a white person, dress like a white people? So, so that's when I started. I tossed out all my T-shirts and put it. I got polo shirts instead,
nice.
and so that's now what I wear if I'm trying to dress down. I wear a polo shirt instead.
Well, I grew up in the 80s and there were jocks and preps and
Mhm.
the prep like I was definitely a prep, so I would dress with polo shirts and this sort of thing and
Right, right.
I like that look. I like that vibe. Like it's really cool. And I like England. Like I mean, there's a Germanic thing in England as you mentioned. Um, but the culture of England and Scotland and even Ireland, although I haven't been to Ireland, but I am Irish. I'm Scottish, Irish, English, Welsh. That's my heritage.
Oh, I got all the lands of the British
And
Isles.
yeah, and I've got some Scandinavian and a bit of German actually. And
The whole Northern European shebang.
yeah, so I used to think it was pretty boring, but now that there's so much racial tension and there's so much talk of white supremacy and all this sort of thing, I'm sort of rethinking it. I'm thinking, well, this is cool. I have an identity because I thought I never,
Yeah,
I thought there was no identity being British, English, whatever. I thought that was like a non-identity, but now with all the racial tensions and everything, I'm starting to realize like, no, I can be proud and I can. There's an identity there, and so I think this is something that's being brought to the surface um, just within the past 10 or 20 years, I would say. What do you
yeah.
think in terms of the trend towards this?
Well, well, the way I see it is, because my mother actually talked about this. She said she came to me. She was like, Connor, I didn't realize that the way you dress is so different because when I was a kid, everyone dressed like you, right?
Ah,
But now that happened when I brought over a number of friends, and they were all dressed in these weird, like ripped clothes and blah 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 blah. And she realized that's why I guess when I hit her that the my normality was abnormal. But I think what you were saying is that like how people think there's no identity, in
mm,
the English. I mean, very much English specifically. Like out of any other peoples in the history of peoples, we are the most, I guess, typical because of how pervasive the empire was,
yeah,
and so it's sort of like the default,
yeah,
and so as a result of that, the way that we perceive the English culture is just, well, you don't have any culture because everybody's already been assimilated, and we're looking through it through the default perspective of relating it to English culture. But yeah, I definitely agree. I think retaking back like the perspective of our culture and like this is we are a people of the world. We're not the default. We're not cultureless. We are unique people with our own like this pattern here is Argyle,
yeah.
right?
Beautiful.
It's originally from Scotland, but like a lot of things, there was a lot of cross. I think the area of Scotland it's from was actually originally Northumbria, so
Didn't have the same ring to it though. Wearing a Northumbria sweater. No, it's an Argyle sweater. It's an
Well,
Argyle sweater.
that's another very interesting point is the repackaging of English culture as Celtic culture, and this is another
Ah,
thing that I this is why I started the account was they repackaged so much Germanic and English culture as being Celtic
ah.
or as being mainland German, but we don't really see the unique perspectives of the English so much anymore, just because, well, green sleeves.
Hmm.
or the Keys of Canterbury. No, those songs are Celtic folk songs. The English don't
Ah,
have any folk songs,
ah,
but no, they are originally English, right? Like English country wear, where you have all the, I don't know if you can see, but this shirt is Tattersall, which is an English pattern. Window pane, you might know it as.
okay.
Um, like uh, all of that stuff, they, take it, they repackage it, and then they sell it again. And that's why there's so many Irish Americans. But there weren't really that many Irish people who came over to the Americas. A lot of Irish Americans are English who are ashamed to be English.
Oh, that's too bad.
And that's the thing. It's, and our English culinary,
Right.
the roast beef. Nobody talks about the roast beef. They talk about the hotel beans, right? Like there's actually a folk song in England called "The Roast Beef of Old England," which talks about the changing culinary, cultural way that we perceive our food, because it was transitioning from roast beef to more French foods were becoming popular in
Uh,
England.
yeah, well, it had such a bad reputation, the food in England, but my wife and I lived in England, and one of our favorite things about it was the food.
Yeah,
The food is good. The food is
it is
good.
good. I cook English meals almost every day, you know,
Yeah, it's
and they
good.
say it's bland, they say it's featureless, but I guess you know what? Maybe they just aren't cooking it right.
And I'm drinking tea right now. I'm drinking tea.
Mm-hmm.
I love tea. I don't drink coffee. I drink tea.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I'm not here to like say, hey, we got the best culture. The English are the best. No, but there's a lot that's underappreciated. That's what you're saying.
Exactly.
I'm wondering with your tie if there's a specific knot that you chose on purpose because you thought that it was the best knot, or do you just use the easiest one, or what?
I I am ashamed to admit I just use the Oriental knot because it
Okay,
is the only one I know how to tie.
is it the easiest one?
Yeah, it's just you flip the tie inside out, then you put the tall side, the thick side over the thin side, you wrap it around, put it through the loop, and then you're done.
Okay. Okay, but
Yeah.
is it? Do you have an idea that maybe you could expand your
Yeah,
knowledge?
if I really dedicated myself to expanding my knot portfolio, I probably could. I think the issue is, and here's the issue with me personally, I do all of my shopping at Value Village, so
Ah, uh-huh, uh-huh.
so at the end of the day, my ties are not fitted, right? They're all
Okay,
different lengths. So
okay. Get yourself a
if I
sewing
wanted
machine.
to
Get
do
yourself a
something
sewing
fancy like
machine.
a Windsor knot, I
Yeah,
would have to do a lot of troubleshooting. And so
yeah.
I can just with these, I can just do the Oriental knot. Oh, that's too long. Let me readjust. Oriental knot
Ah,
again. Then it
okay.
fits.
I see. Yeah, well, if you get yourself a sewing machine, I'm not joking, you will be amazed at what a difference it can make, not only for your tie. I mean, you can shorten a long tie.
Hmm.
But for just shaping all your clothes, just tweak a little bit, and it's gonna make a big difference. My wife sews, and she's taught me a lot in terms of. I mean, I don't practice it because I'm comfortable being a slob. But she takes great care, and she likes to fit her clothes, and she'll go to Value Village, and she'll get something for $2, and she'll turn it into what looks like a $300 outfit because she just knows how to form it to her body and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So it's a good, and there's no shame in it. There are a lot of men who learn how to sew, and it just opens up a whole new thing for your wardrobe, like where you're gonna have people stopping you on the street saying, "Where'd you get that outfit?" And you'll be like, "Well, Value Village."
Exactly.
But I
Yeah.
tweaked it. But I tweaked it. You know what I mean?
Well, you know what? Even like I do get people that ask me where I do my shopping just because any amount of effort is going above the grain in the modern day, and it's kind of sad, but it's okay. Uh,
Are
and
you
and like
are you
I
comfortable?
also do shopping at like Walmart. But
Okay.
actually, funny thing is, the one time I did get a fitted suit, I got a fitted suit, and it was like $300. Um, I hated it because It was the new kind of
Ah,
suit where they like have it really tight
ah,
and like it makes you all sweaty. It's made out of plastic. And I'm like, what is this?
ah,
I much
ah.
rather prefer. There it is. I much prefer my sport coat made out of wool that I got from
Oh,
Value Village.
wow. Yeah. The real
And this
deal. The real deal.
this was owned by some small old man, but you know,
Wow.
like it's full. It's full. Like
Wow. It's got
it's not
body.
tight, it's not constricting, it's
Yeah.
breathable.
Yeah.
And that's what they don't do nowadays. That's the issue. They don't do that nowadays.
Amazing. The quality. There are a lot of good British reality shows, and a lot of them about sewing. There's the Great British Sewing Bee, and there's a very dapper man there that he designs clothing on Savile Row, and his name's Graham, and he's a high class tailor, and
Mhm.
it's a beautiful art. And of course, yes, we as Christians we don't want to cater to passions or to vanity or pride, but I appreciate what you're doing in terms of trying to have dignity and bring culture
Mhm.
back, because our culture is the bar is so low. Like you said, the bar is so low right now in terms of the standards, that it is sad. It is a little bit sad and embarrassing. It's too late for me, but yeah, for someone like you, go for it. Go for it. I applaud you. I encourage you. So I want to ask you, does it get the ladies, like, are ladies interested in your type of strapping young
Well,
man?
I would say a little bit.
Okay, good.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not to toot my own horn, but I do think that the what's it called, the dedication or the effort doesn't go unnoticed at the very least. I think it's not so much what you're wearing. Like when it comes to women, not to be like a dating Andrew Tate kind of fellow, you try to game it. Uh, but the thing is what they're looking for isn't necessarily what you're wearing.
Mm,
It's that you're trying. Because
right.
if you try to make yourself look presentable, well, then you might try in other parts of the relationship. And trying is that's what they look for.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Now I have a funny story about how I met my wife. Like, she was all dressed to the nines, and I
Hmm.
was wearing a t-shirt and purple shorts. Purple shorts. Okay. Short shorts. These are short shorts. Okay. And I had my long hair and everything, but she kind of likes the rock and roll rebel type, so she went for it, and she pursued me and she got me. Now we're happily married 28 years now, so
Well, there you go. I
it
guess
works out. So
that's
you feel you
there
feel
you
called
go.
to marriage, or called to the priesthood, called to
Uh,
religious
I'll,
life? What?
I'm I think I'll definitely settle down, get married, have kids. That's sort of how,
Ah,
like my dad, like I was saying, my dad's not religious, but he likes a lot of the more social aspects and the traditional aspects of it. Like my whole life, he was like, Connor, better go have kids. Yeah, I need grandkids. And I'm all for it. I'm all for
yeah,
it.
yeah, cool.
I'll
So,
support it.
do you have any siblings, or what are they like?
Yeah, I have one and a half siblings. My parents are divorced, so I have a
Uh,
half brother. But my sister's still a teenager, um, and so she's a teenager. Uh, and then my parents got divorced late, and so my mother has a half brother who is like in just barely out of elementary school. So
oh, really? Okay, okay, okay. See,
so like it is interesting. I do get to get a view at like what's happening in the next generation, and
hmm
to be honest, I'm not the most hopeful, but
it's
uh,
dark, dark. You were born into dark times, my son. We're
yeah,
living in
well,
very dark times here. But
it is interesting. Like the internet when I was growing up, which is still, I guess I'm fairly young, but the internet when I was growing up was like
tame.
like a wild west. Every third link every third link you clicked was to rotten.com, right? I don't know if you
I
know
don't
what
know
that
what
is.
that is. No.
That's a gore website.
Oh,
So,
okay. Okay.
but it was the Wild West, and that had some traumatizing things, but also it was more, I feel, almost like you're a kid exploring in the woods. Nowadays, the internet's very sanitized. The internet's very corporatized. If you go on YouTube, everything's engineered to get you addicted to it, to release those dopamine endorphins. When I was watching YouTube when I was like 10 years old, it was some guy in his basement reviewing video games, right? And it was like worse lighting than this. And he was like stumbling, and there was no audio quality.
Yeah.
And it was more genuine.
Yeah.
And I think that contributes sort of, like, if you look, I don't know if you know what Skibbity Toilet is.
No.
It's this hyper engineered social YouTube short 1 minute per episode content, and it just cashes in on bright colors, and kids are obsessed with it. Kids are obsessed with it. It's still ongoing. And it's it's the attention span thing. I had to, when I was a kid, I was sitting through 30-minute dark, dank basement video game reviews. Now it's
Right.
new content every 5 seconds, right? And
Right.
that's the big difference. And like the television, if you look at the television,
What is
what the
television? What is television for you? Because when I grew up, there was a box that would only play television, and you just switch the channel.
yeah, well, I was referring to cable, but I guess I could also mean like cable
So
television.
cable television still exists? People still watch that?
Yeah, it still exists, but I guess like I was also going to name examples from streaming, which is
Okay.
made by the same
Netflix and all
companies,
that
but
stuff.
it's just, but like if we look at like these kids shows on cable television, or like my brother doesn't so much watch cable, but like he'll watch these same shows on streaming services, which at the end of the day is the same result, just no ads, right? And the shows on these televisions, these kids shows, aren't the same as like when I was growing up, because when I was growing up, we had like Christian mother associations assaulting the not assaulting, but like harassing the television makers to make Christian content, not Christian, but like Christian friendly content.
Right.
But nowadays, there's no block to do that anymore. There's nobody impassioned enough. I'm not doing it. Maybe I should be, but like the mothers, nowadays they just turn on the iPad and whatever's playing is playing. And there's not like advocacy for these kids. And so these television shows, it's like, I've seen some of it, and it's like, I don't know, I guess the best I've seen is Bluey.
Okay.
But even then it has a lot of that more progressive undertones to it, and it doesn't really speak to the same values.
Yeah, it's propaganda for the left. And my friend in the live chat, I want to say hello to him, Daniel Drazinovich. He's asking what you think about Nietzsche, the philosophy of Nietzsche, and the person of Nietzsche.
Nietzsche?
Nietzsche.
Oh, Nietzsche.
Nietzsche.
Oh,
Nietzsche.
Like the philosopher?
Yeah. God is dead.
Yeah. Well, there you go. But I think here's the interesting thing. If you look earlier on in his career, he does actually have some interesting things that I don't necessarily disagree with. But then later on, he said he admits that he hates his early philosophy. So, but like the Übermensch, the idea that there is a perfect version of yourself and that you need to work and achieve that version of yourself, that is a philosophy that I don't necessarily disagree with. I think, we should always be working to better ourselves and try our best to be, the best person we can be. Because I guess that's sort of what, what God wants us to do. But then later on, he gets in his own head and he says, he hates his early philosophy. So
he's saying that you look great. So you're making an impression even on And it's funny because I'm Canadian, you're Canadian, and my friend Daniel Drazinovich is Canadian. Normally, it's more Americans on my show, but that's
Mm.
just because of the population, obviously.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
I just
They have 10 times the amount of people than
Yeah,
us.
we have. Well, I just had E. Michael Jones on my show. Do you know about him? His reputation?
Oh, the theologian?
No, he's sort of he's a writer, and
Okay.
he's infamous and notorious for his anti-Semitism, so-called
Right.
anti-Semitism, and he claims not to be anti-Semitic, and I believe him, but he harbors I think, a lot of animosity toward Jewish power or whatever you want to call it. And so I think I don't agree with his approach, but he's reacting against Jewish power. And I always say, well, someone's going to have the power. Like, I mean, Satan's the prince of this world. They're going to be mafias running this world. We already know that, whether they're Jews or Muslims or Christians or whatever. Like a friend of mine said, I'm glad it's not the Christians that are doing. If it's the Jews that are, running the mafia that is this corrupt world government or whatever it is. I
Hmm.
have no opinion about what's happening, in the upper echelons of Satan's kingdom here on Earth, but whoever is highly ranked in that mafia style control, I have nothing but pity for them, and I hope and pray that they convert and they see that the true happiness is not found in money or power or whatever it is that the elites are into. What's your view as a bright young man, a Christian man, a Catholic man?
Hmm.
What's your view of the corruption that is in the world and the dark forces of Satan and his demons through pornography and through abortion and through a lot of these liberal ideas? Not everything that's liberal is evil, obviously, but
Hmm.
what's your view as a young man facing that for your future, the world that you live in? What's your approach in trying to remedy that, other than prayer and the sacraments?
Right. Well, obviously, those would be up there. But in terms of like, I assume you mean like temporal
Yeah,
action.
like action, getting involved in politics. Like I watch Nick Fuentes. He's another controversial guy. I don't agree with everything, but I like him. He's a Catholic young man. It's
Mhm.
he's also fighting what he perceives to be Jewish power, but he thinks, and his followers firmly believe that the young people have to rise up and confront the powers that be because they're corrupt. And I'm just wondering if you see politics as a viable means of remedying the situation here.
Well, I think I have a political philosophy, so to speak, of nobody does it unless you do it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, what that sort of means for me is if I don't do it, right, nobody will. So if I just live my life and outwardly speak, the way that outspeak,
Lip
like it
service,
says in my bio.
lip service. You talking about lip service?
No, 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 not
Okay.
lip service. Like if I don't just do it,
Yeah.
like do the things, be the change I want to see in the
There you go.
world,
I was
right?
just gonna say. I was just gonna say that. Yeah.
If I don't do that, then nobody will.
Right.
And so if I don't go to protests, if I don't be active, if I don't make this account, and if I don't make the website, the healand.org, if I don't organize the group of fellows, and if I don't try to preserve Germanic Christianity, if I don't try to preserve culture, my English culture in the political Canadian way, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If I don't, preach God's commandments to everyone I know, then nobody will. But if people see me do it, they might do it too. And at the end of the day, there's only 3 degrees of separation. If one out of 3 people do something, well then you got the majority basically. And I guess how that sort of works with the whole political thing is you kind of just have to try your best to live in a Catholic way of life and live it publicly. Don't just hide away. And of course, there is time for personal relationship of God with God, you must actually earnestly live it. You can't only live it in the public way. There are people and politicians who do that. They rhyme with Schmo Schmeiden, but uh,
And Justin Udo.
but like living that life, you shouldn't do one or the other. Living like hiding your faith away versus only doing lip service, I guess, like you could say. Um, at the end of the day, is the same result of it's unearnest, it's ungenuine, it's untrue, and it's not helpful, I guess.
Yeah, well, I was at church this morning, not to brag, but to give you an example. We were locked out because the guy forgot to come. There's a steward or whoever that comes to open the door, and I got friendly with the organist because I'm interested in organ music.
Mhm.
And so he said, "Oh, the guy never showed up. Would you be willing?" This is all in French because I'm in Quebec. Would you be willing to put your name on the list? We can call you occasionally, and you can be in charge of opening up the church, in the morning, so that we're not locked out like this. Because it makes everything late. Like I couldn't go to confession because the priest didn't have time because the guy
Mhm.
forgot to open the door on time. Okay. So, I said yes, like yes, put me on the list. I'd like to help because there's a desire to actually do something with my local parish instead of just
Mhm.
coming, getting the sacraments and leaving. I want to
Mhm.
be more involved, and it's something that's really lacking in today's culture in the Catholic Church in Canada. I don't know about elsewhere, but
I,
here,
I don't know either, but yeah, like I recently, I guess, sort of the fruits of my philosophy. I recently, a coworker of mine, I met him at work, and he's signed up for RCIA now.
oh no way,
Yeah, and
cool.
I took him down to our local parish, got him signed up, and we had a tour of the church with the organizer of sacraments, and like he said, like he absolutely appreciates, like my passion, his passion. He said that it's great seeing, the youth.
Yeah,
So
is he your age or a bit older?
impassioned towards faith and actually, living the Catholic life, and that's and contributing, to the parish,
Yeah,
and that's the very same thing, right? Like,
yeah.
um, I'll give you another sort of firsthand example of this is my grandfather. He's Catholic, and he ran the local we had this sort of local lay Catholic charity sort of thing for furniture.
Okay.
Um, but the issue was he just recently retired, and the only person who was willing or able to replace him uh, isn't really that involved. And now like he spent his whole life building
Hmm.
up this organization, and now because it's been handed off in such a way, it's kind of falling apart. And I know, I guess I could, but I don't really have the capabilities either, right? And
Okay.
so,
Hmm.
but that's sort of like a bad example of like how or it's a good example of the sort of negatives that are
Yeah,
happening.
yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah.
um,
I just want to say that here in Montreal, I don't know about where you are, but where I am, there used to be many, many Catholic churches, and they were well populated. At least on Sundays, every Sunday. But now they're closing, they're in disrepair, and they're in financial crisis, and a lot of money was paid out for a sex scandal, whatever. Throughout the church in North America, it's just been a big disaster. Um, but my church, the previous parish I used to live at, I think it was sold. It's the second oldest church in Montreal. This parish that I'm at now, the roof is like the ceiling is falling apart, and so when I was talking to my friend the organist, I said, "Well, I could help with like patching things up. I'm not an expert, but I can help out." And he said, "Okay, cool. I'll put your name on the list, and we've got a guy, but he might need help. So whatever." But what I'm saying is like things are literally falling apart. The church is literally falling apart in Canada. Is certainly in Quebec, And your story about the furniture shop or this charity thing, it's like it can't run itself. We're not going to have AI
Exactly.
robots running it, not anytime soon.
Hmm.
And even if they did, it wouldn't be the same thing. If even if they did
Yeah.
have AI robots running it, it wouldn't be the same vibe. That's not what I don't think that's what God wants. I don't think He wants robots serving us. I think He wants people serving us. So to think about who's going to step up, who's going to fill the shoes, and who's going to be in the priesthood, because I asked you and you said no, I'm not for the priesthood, I'm for marriage. Well, that's fine. That's I'm not giving you a guilt trip, but who's going to be in the priesthood? It's all going to be Africans and Indians and whatever. That's what we have
Yeah.
here. My parish priest is from Madagascar. Lovely guy, I love him. But we can't find Canadians to be in the priesthood. We don't have enough. We don't have enough people in the seminaries. We're getting them from
Mhm.
the developing countries. So it's
Wow.
tragic.
Well, my buddy, uh, my buddy that just recently signed up for
Oh,
RCIA says
uh,
he's uninterested in women. So maybe
oh.
I'll give him a nudge.
As long as he's not interested in men, because we don't need more. We don't.
Yeah, no, no, no,
We
no,
don't
no,
need
not
more
like
of
that.
that. We don't need
Not
more.
like that. Not like that. I mean,
Okay,
he's just
okay,
not
okay,
interested in relationships in
okay,
general.
okay, okay, okay,
That's
okay,
not what I meant. That's not
okay,
what.
okay, okay, okay. Well, we have to
No, I
be.
certainly.
We.
If that were the case, I don't know if I would have. Well, I don't. No,
It
well,
would have been difficult. It
but
would have been
like,
a different situation. Yeah, it would have been a
yeah,
difficult situation for you, even to welcome into the church. There would be more steps involved in terms of getting a
yeah,
hold of his sin and all that sort of thing. And
yeah.
how
No,
do you
it would
find
have been
how do you find struggling with sexual sin without getting into all the details? Because you're young and you got the hormones and everything, and women are sexy and they're everywhere on
mhm.
TV and billboards and on the streets. So, I mean, I'm 50 something. I'm 53 now, and even I find it hard not to look at sexy women. But I'm not supposed to, and I try not to. But for you, it must be really hard. So what do you do? Do you just have a good way to control your eyes, avoiding the near occasion of sin and stuff like that? What do you do?
Yeah. Well, obviously it's always a struggle, but I just try to my best, to I guess kind of acknowledge within myself that because here's an issue I think that a lot of people fall into is that they try to like fight it with their fists.
White knuckle chastity.
They get angry at it, but that's exactly how they fall into it. What you have to do is you sort of have to acknowledge, like, oh, this is a thing that's happening, but I won't let it control me. Just I'll let it pass over. This is not me
Yeah,
that's thinking
right,
these things,
right.
and then it just kind of washes away,
Okay, okay.
right?
Yeah, that's good.
And you got to take a more slow and I guess meditative spiritual approach than like no, 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 get
Right,
out.
right,
That's what
right,
that's what
right.
I have a friend, and he did that and he failed every time, right? Because that's just
How
not
did
to
you
dis.
learn that? How did you learn your Zen approach?
Um, well, actually, it was my friend. She it was some therapy thing for like um, intrusive thoughts with mental illness.
Oh, no
Um,
way.
so and it works the same way. Is if you have
Ah,
like a intrusive thought, if you're mentally ill, right?
yeah,
And you have an intrusive thought like
yeah,
I need to kill people.
yeah, yeah.
Then I'm not saying she was thinks that, but you know what I'm saying, right?
Harming
Like,
yourself or others, these
yeah,
are thoughts.
exactly.
Yeah.
Then what they recommend, the therapists and all that, they recommend what I just said. Instead of trying to fight the thought, you have to let it wash away.
Observe it, just observing it wash.
Hmm.
It's not my problem. Just let it wash over you.
Exactly. And the same thing works with,
Cool.
any sort of thought that you don't
Yeah.
want to give credence. You kind of just say, hey, this isn't me. This isn't what I want to be thinking. I'm not going to let this control me.
Nice.
Just and let it pass through.
Nice.
Because if you fight it, you're thinking about it. And if you're thinking about it, it's winning.
Ah, nice. I'm going to use your technique. I'm going to use your technique. And some people, some people struggle with OCD, like, oh, did I turn the stove off? Did I turn? Oh yeah, I definitely turned it off. Did I? You know what I mean? Just like
Mhm.
obsessive, with little fears, little anxieties, whatever it is. So yeah, that technique could be very good for that. I don't suffer from that, but I know people that do. Just like always going back to the same idea, go back to the same idea, and it's just like
Yeah.
it's not productive. It's wasting time. You know what I mean? So it's very interesting. So you're a bright young man. You've got a bright future ahead of you. Um, what's next on the agenda? Like, I mean, you want to expand? Do you want to write? Do you want to build a web,
Well,
expand your website, or expand your
yeah,
membership, or what are you working on?
basically all of those
Videos,
things.
making videos, going on podcasts.
We have some, we have like some videos up, like YouTube videos, where we have like, the odes of the Healand. I guess we didn't really get into Healand or what
Yeah, yeah,
Healandry means.
yeah. What is that?
So it comes from the Old English word Healand, which just means savior or healer.
Oh, oh, no way.
And it was basically it was the premier name for Jesus Christ within the land of the Germanics. That's what the Heliand, which what's got me on this journey, is the old Saxon word for healand. And
Oh,
in German and Dutch today, they still use Highland,
oh,
which is the same word, and it's not their primary name now. They use it, auxiliarily, just to mean savior. But it's the same thing. And
cool.
so, when I say healandry, it's just, a fancy sort of native way of saying Christianity, right?
Ah, ah, wow, cool.
And
Yeah.
so, we have the website healand.org. Um, and we've been trying to, add to it, expand to it. It's been slow going because I'm the only one with the sort of the website maker. Maybe down the line if I can find somebody else who can help me. But presently, it's just been a balance of tweeting every day, Instagram every day, sharing out what's on that sort of, I guess, just random topics relating to Germanic Christianity. We will like talk about saints that are important.
Okay.
Um,
That was my next question was well,
yeah,
there's Hildegard of Bingen. Do you know about her? Patron saint of
yeah, I'm somewhat familiar. Yeah,
I think she's the patron saint of all of Europe, if I'm not mistaken.
I think one of them. There's like there's a number of patron saints of Europe.
Saint Hildegard of Bingen. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so
Hmm.
let's see just briefly, is she Germanic?
Yes, that is a Germanic name, so she would be. She might be Frankish. I don't know. I don't know what Bingen is.
Yeah, Sybil of the Rhine, a
Yeah, so the Rhine, that's in Germany.
German Benedictine abbess and polymath, active as a writer, composer, philosopher, mystic, visionary. Okay, yeah. I think she might be the one with the cosmic egg that talks about the cosmic egg, if I'm not mistaken. As a medical writer and a practitioner during the High Middle Ages. Wow, so I've heard about her, but she sounds like she's very, very
Yeah,
interesting.
so and there's a large number of various Germanic saints. Like, are you familiar with Saint Edmund the Martyr?
Not really.
He was the original patron saint of England
Okay.
prior to the Norman invasion in 1066, and he was killed. He was the king of East Anglia, and he was killed by Vikings for refusing to give up his Christian faith.
Was he the
Yeah.
confessor, Saint Edward the Confessor, or that's a different guy?
Edward the Confessor is a different guy.
Okay.
Edmund the Martyr,
Oh, Edmund, Mond, the Mar
UND.
Edmund the Martyr. Okay, and he became king, you said.
He was the king, and then he was invaded by Vikings, and the Viking king told him, and he was like, "Hey, if you don't convert back to paganism, we're going to kill you. We're going to tie you to a tree, shoot you with
Uh,
100 arrows, and then cut
oh,
off your head."
oh, and that's what they did.
And that's what they did. He said, "I will never forget. I will never forsake my Christian faith." And so they tied him to a tree, shot him with 100 arrows, and cut his head off. And
Wow.
he was the patron saint of England um, for a long time, up until the year 1066, um, when William the Conqueror invaded and had him replaced with Saint George.
Is Saint George real or fake?
Saint George is, I think, as far as I'm aware, he's real. He's the one who slew the dragon. I think that part is more mythological and more metaphorical, I would say. But he slew the dragon, but he was from Anatolia originally.
Oh, Turkey.
And so that's what people say, and now people use this as an argument to further beat down England's identity. They say, well, St. George, he's our patron saint. He's from Turkey, even though it would have been Greek at the time. But they say he was a Turkish immigrant, but he was a Greek Roman who
So you
lived
can
in
say
Anatolia.
Saint Edmund the Martyr. That's our patron.
That's our original. I actually have on my little shrine here, I don't know how well you can see it, but that is a pendant to Saint Edmund the Martyr.
Cool.
It has the coat of arms of East Anglia, and then I can't tell what the other thing, and then on the back it says IHS.
Nice. Yeah.
And this is from England.
Nice. What do you think?
Yeah.
What do you think about? I want to get your feedback because my wife really loves the Robin Hood mythology. Is there any Catholic content in there whatsoever? Is there any Germanic stuff in there that you find interesting?
Germanic.
Yeah.
There is Germanic content. As for Catholic, I mean,
they're the bad guys.
Time,
they're the bad guys in that stuff, right?
Well, at the time of that story, all of England was Catholic. So.
Oh, okay.
It came about in the 11 to 1200s, I believe, and essentially Robin Hood was either was an earl or the son of an earl.
Okay.
And he was disenfranchised. His family was disenfranchised by the Norman aristocracy, and so that's he was a English earl, and then when the Norman aristocracy took over, the French took over, they had his lands stripped away, and so it is really a sort of a conflict between the common Anglo-Saxons and the aristocratic Franco-Normans.
Wow.
Right? So you'll see that is only really represented in The Adventures of Robin Hood.
Okay, that's a particular production. That's a particular
40s.
Production. Is it a TV series? Or
yeah, it's in movies. They mostly, in the films, they don't really talk about that, and it isn't really emphasized that much in the original stories either. But in that particular film, they talk a lot about how the Normans are beating down, the Anglo-Saxon common people, and so that's just kind of part of it.
That's fascinating. Do you know? I mean, I know you're not an expert. You do know a lot, though. So I was throwing these questions out there, and you're doing a good job. So thank you for that. But what is with Scotland in particular? Why? What is their status? They're not a country. They're not England. What is it? It's like a province.
So,
is it a province or what is it?
Scotland was originally, just a country of Celts. Scots actually came from Ireland originally, and then they crossed across the
Water.
Yeah, to Scotland, where they kicked out the native Picts, Picts. And those were the people who painted their face blue. But you'll see that in Braveheart, right?
Okay.
But that comes from the Picts, not the Scots. And essentially, they controlled most of northern Scotland, the Highlands, right? Where they have all the bagpipes and whatnot. But the lowlands was controlled by the English, who had kicked out the Britons, Briton. And so southern Scotland.
Were the Britons French originally?
They were also Celtic. So they were like the Britons went on to become the Welsh.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So Welsh and Wales is just the Germanic word for foreigner.
So the Welsh were in the lowlands of Scotland originally, and they were called Britons?
They were all over. Were all over.
Okay.
Right? So the Welsh were everywhere from southern Scotland to the southern tip of Devon, right? The southern tip of Cornwall, up until the English, led by Hengist and Horsa, which were the original founders of England. They came across the English Channel kicked out all of the Welsh, and that's actually the progenitor to the King Arthur myth. Was the King
Oh.
Arthur myth was sort of like revenge story, was a revenge story against the Anglo-Saxons who had invaded.
Ah.
But nowadays, if you look ethnically, interestingly enough, if you look ethnically, southern Scotland is majority English.
Ah.
But
Ah.
don't tell that to a Scot because he'll argue with you about it. But um, the Highlands are still very much Scottish, very much purely Celt. But yeah, southern Scotland, pretty Germanic. And an interesting thing about that, if you're familiar with plaid,
Yeah.
plaid is actually originally a Germanic pattern as well. It
Oh,
was
no way.
introduced to Scotland. It was introduced to Scotland by the Vikings. I actually have a thread about that if you're interested in
Yeah.
reading it.
Yeah.
They found a lot of plaid in bogs from like the 700s, which is way before we see plaid in Scotland. We don't see plaid in Scotland around until around the 1300s. So there's
Cool.
a lot of time for the Germanics to have been wearing plaid, and it's actually, if you go back and you look at I don't know if you're familiar with the Bayeux Tapestry.
No.
The Bayeux Tapestry is a tapestry which talks about the Norman invasion of England, and
Oh.
in it, the English are wearing plaid.
Ah. Okay.
So, yeah, throughout the whole history, it's interesting, how much stuff gets ascribed onto different
Right.
peoples.
Right. Yeah. Well, I always knew it was a bit of a joke. Because I used to live in Edinburgh, Scotland, for a brief time. Strange but beautiful city. And there were all the tourist shops with their plaid, and all the locals were telling us that this is a complete joke because there were no plaid kilts in the lowlands ever,
Mm-hmm.
as far as they told me. Like that was just import just for the tourists.
More or less, yeah, because again, the lowlands where Edinburgh was Northumbria. That's why it's called Edinburgh. Edin
Ah, ah,
is, I believe, the name of a fellow,
okay.
and then Borough
That's cool.
comes from Berg,
Yeah.
as in like Brandenburg, or so
Ah,
Borough
Germanic.
is a Germanic suffix.
Ah,
Um, you'll
ah,
see it in other cities, and like Cadbury and Canterbury.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
the southern version of borough.
Oh,
They
really? Oh,
So that's also like Berg. It's Berg, but they changed the GH to a Y. And then you'll also see like rugby Y. That's
ah,
also Berg, but it's the Viking version of Berg.
wow.
So Rugby, Bixby,
Very
cities like that.
cool.
BY is the Viking version.
Very cool. Well, I have a connection to Canterbury because I love the English music of that region from the early 70s. It's called progressive rock. And there's a whole subgenre called the Canterbury scene, which is just,
Mhm.
again, sort of a loose, retroactive vision of what took place. Because back in the day, they weren't actually, it wasn't like a cohesive scene. But looking back, we can say that something was happening musically around that time. So I am a bit of an Anglophile, I have to admit. Like I do like English culture, and we watch a lot of English TV. My wife and I. She loves England. She loves everything about it. The sky, the clouds, even the rain is nice there, and the greenery, and it's
I gotta
beautiful.
admit, I do like a nice overcast day.
You have to go. Have you been to England yet?
Not personally. I'll be entirely candid with you. I've never left my province.
Well, you're still young. You're still young,
Yeah,
but
I got a lot of time. I got a
is it
lot
on
of
your
time
list? Is
traveling
it
the
on your
world.
list going to UK? That's on your list for sure.
Yeah, England is definitely top of the list. And then also,
Germany?
actually, I want to make a pilgrimage to the Shrine of Our Lady of Walsingham.
Oh, where's that?
It's in England, and
Whereabouts?
it's Our Lady of Walsingham is basically the English Marian devotion,
Oh,
and
really? Walsingham. How would you spell that? L.
Walsingham. And there was a woman, and she saw Mary wearing a Saxon crown, and carrying the baby Jesus, and it was a Marian apparition, and
Oh,
that's the English devotion
And
to
there's
Our
a blue
Lady.
scapular from Walsingham. There's a blue scapular from Our
Mhm.
Lady of Walsingham. So they've got a lot of devotions here.
And yeah, and it was the big pilgrimage back in the day.
Oh,
Is if you were English, you would make your way to Walsingham.
very cool. I want to ask you about, I don't have that much time left, but I want to ask you about one of my favorite saints. He's sometimes referred to as the second Augustine. It's Saint Anselm of Canterbury.
Yes,
You
yes, that
you like
was
him?
the. I actually have on my book there. I have my shelf there. Sorry, I have a book called The Wisdom of Catholicism, and he actually wrote one of the books in there.
Oh, no
Um,
way.
yeah, so
It's a collection of selected writings, or what is it?
it's a lot. Yeah, basically, like a huge number of saints has Thomas More, um, Thomas Aquinas, or sorry, Thomas Aquinas, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. G.K. Chesterton is in there too. He's not a saint, but they're in there. But Saint Anselm, yeah, he was a Norman, and he,
Oh, that's right. He was born in Beck or something.
yeah, but he is still important, and he has a lot of very interesting writings, and
Yeah.
um, uh, but he kind of came around and I think he helped to reform the English church after the Norman invasion and whatnot, because there was a lot of disarray, because it was at that time England was 7 different kingdoms,
Oh.
and so he kind of helped to tie it all together and put it in a neat little bow, and which eventually Henry VIII had to go around and ruin. Uh,
Yeah, that was actually on my list here. I've got Anselm and then Henry VIII. He's the next topic I was going to bring up with you. I
mhm.
mean, what an embarrassment. I mean, I really cringe when I think about it. No offense to my Anglican friends, okay? No offense. But when I think about the history of any Christian denomination, the one that makes me cringe the most is the Anglicans with Henry VIII. I mean, I just see it as it's too obvious, it's too blatant. The split is too blatant, it's too cold, it's too bold. It's not
He just wanted
subtle.
to divorce his wife over.
There's nothing subtle about this split. You know what I mean? It's just it's crude, it's crass.
Well, and that's why they have to do stuff like the branch theory, uh,
Ah,
where
softens
they,
the blow, softens the blow a bit.
yeah, and then, well, you know what, but you know what, I will give some credit to them, because even though they destroyed thousands of beautiful Catholic churches all across England, and uh, burned down a lot of that heritage, I will give them credit that the Ordinariate is one of the big shining beacons of
Ah,
Germanic Catholic heritage, because
oh, okay.
they managed to preserve, because during the Protestant Reformation, um, a lot of that Germanic Christian identity was given to the Protestants, because there weren't any Germanics to keep it around.
Right.
And so the Anglican Ordinariate in the Catholic Church, they and actually a good number of the members of the fellowship are members of the Ordinariate, just
Ah,
because they do such a successful job at maintaining that heritage.
amazing.
Um, like with words like Whitsun versus Pentecost,
Right.
divine worship. Uh, they it is a lot more. I guess you could say Anglish.
Anglish. Right,
Yeah.
right, right. That's fascinating. Yeah. So, what was I going to say about the Anglicans? Well, their liturgy, their high church liturgy is very nice, and they're known for their music, their choirs, and
Mhm.
I think there's a lot of beauty. And the oh yeah, that's what I was going to mention was the Common Book of Worship. I don't know if you've read it. Common Book of Prayer or whatever it's called. It's like
I think it's the Book of Common Prayer. I
something
haven't
like
read it.
that, something like that. But it's very nice. It to me it sounds Catholic, right?
Yeah,
So I really appreciate a lot of the cultural aspects of Anglicanism for sure, for sure.
we actually in the fellowship we have a Sarum Rite Rosary guide. Um, which are you familiar with the Sarum
No,
Rite?
no.
It was actually one of the things that Anselm did, I believe, was he codified the Anglo-Norman liturgy,
Oh,
into a singular rite, because at the time, Anglo-Saxon liturgy was sort of all over the place, because it was 7 different countries, right? And so what he did was, when he came along, he took all of the different ones and codified it into one uh, use of the Roman Rite, and that's what they call it, the Saurum Rite. And so we actually have a PDF you can
oh,
get, and it has the Rosary from the
oh,
Saurum Rite, and
oh,
it's, for all intents and purposes, it's kind of just it's basically the same as the scriptural Rosary, just using a little bit more Englishy words.
I
But
see.
it's a very interesting thing. It was written, the guide was written by one of our members, Bristol Garrett.
Okay,
He wrote that.
nice. My friend Daniel's asking if you've studied the Franks in any depth. The Franks, the people.
Uh, I wish I had some books on the Franks. I have a book about the medieval church, which
Okay.
I'll consult, and that has a lot of information about the
Where
Franks.
were
I
the
think
Franks from?
they were originally from about the Western Germany, and they after the fall of the Roman Empire, they all went west into where what we can now call France, because
I
that
see.
comes from Frank,
I see.
and they were a Germanic tribe. Charlemagne was a Frank,
I
if
see,
you're
right.
familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they spoke essentially kind of Dutch, if you're familiar with Dutch, that descends from Frankish.
Ah,
Um, and so, they spoke a Germanic language. They had Germanic practices. Saint Boniface, if you're familiar with him, was asked to come over to around the time that the Heliand was written.
ah.
Saint Boniface, the English missionary, was asked to help Christianize the recently conquered Saxon lands, and that's when he was down in Hesse, which is a region in Germany, he cut down Thor's oak,
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
and that's actually where we get the Christmas tree from, because after he cut down Thor's oak, he planted a pine tree because it has 3 points like the Holy Trinity.
Wow, cool.
So that's where we get the Christmas tree from, is Saint Boniface, over
Cool.
in Hesse. And yeah, the Heliand is one of the methods they tried to use to help integrate the Saxon peoples, is because, well, you can cut down the trees, you can get rid of their churches, or their hofs, they would like to call it, but culturally, it's important to make sure they're not carrying on those sort of demonic traditions, right? And so, integrating the faith into the culture was the best way. It's enculturation. And the Heliand, it's very beautiful. Like, they talk about the Heland and his Thanes, which is Christ and the apostles,
Wow, cool.
uh, which is, it's a very fascinating, and I very much embrace it, which is the whole point of the whole project,
Of
right?
course. Yeah, of course. It's amazing. My friend's asking again if you have a German philosopher,
Uh,
a favorite German
a favorite
philosopher, a
a favorite
favorite
German philosopher,
Goethe, or who is the other guy there? Hegel.
Hegel. Well, because the issue is with the whole German philosophical scene, is that it was really around the time of when Germany was kind of trying to emulate the French Revolution a bit, trying to unite all of the German provinces. Well, that's what Deutschland über alles means. Germany as an idea is most
Over.
important over all of
Over.
because at that time Germany was divided into a million different tiny countries, right? And so, you know, um, so those philosophers, they were kind of pretty influenced by kind of, whether they disagreed with or whether they agreed with Enlightenment ideas, which at the end of the day doesn't really uh, make the best cohesion with sort of Catholic or Christian philosophy. But if I had to pick, um, oh boy, um, I could tell you my favorite Germanic philosopher,
Yeah.
but mainland German. is a bit more difficult.
Not a lot to choose, not a lot of good
There
ones
there
to
is
choose
there's a
from.
lot of most of them are saints, right? If we're talking about
Yeah.
like good philosophy,
Yeah.
but I mean, yeah, really just reading the writings of saints gives you a great outlook in terms of and a lot of help regarding like understanding these worldviews and understanding our Christian faith and how to interpret it. Because these saints, their sort of messages are everlasting.
Of
Like the
course.
church and like God.
Evergreen. They're evergreen messages. Uh,
Exactly, evergreen, like the pine tree that Boniface
yeah.
planted. It's exactly like that.
I've got someone here in the chat. I don't recognize him. DVD the Seedorf. Maybe he's a friend of yours. He asks, "Can a Catholic use the Common Book of Prayer?" Well, I say we can use everything and anything. It's just how you use it. We have to use everything in a Catholic way, and certainly, we have to be on guard because if you're reading something that's outside of the visible boundaries of the church, we have to be cautious that there might be error. But certainly,
Mhm.
we can take the good. And as Saint Justin Martyr famously said, everything that's true belongs to us Christians, so we really have nothing to fear. There's truth
For sure.
everywhere. What do you say? What do you
And
say?
to add to that, I do believe the Ordinariate has a modified version of it.
Oh, okay.
So
Oh,
um,
okay. That would be interesting to get a hold of that. I think I might look that up.
yeah, if you want to look into like an Ordinariate Book of Common Prayer, I think that's probably
Ah,
your best bet.
oh, that's an excellent idea. Yeah, good tip. So I do have to let you go here, but I hope you come back because I want to ask you a lot more questions and hear a lot more about my heritage. I want you to tell me
Right?
about my
Yeah. No.
heritage.
For
You know what
sure.
I mean?
For
That's fun.
sure.
That's fun. So do you have friends or that are not directly involved but who are nonetheless excited and they like me are just prompting you with question after question? Do you know what I mean? Or do they just join you immediately and become part of your association?
Well, that for aforementioned friend who's just going into RCI, he's very much the same. Actually, he was just asking me a bunch of questions about like devolution versus
Oh,
decentralization
okay.
in like political, because he didn't know the difference. So he,
Okay.
he asks me questions about like whenever we work together, it's always like, Connor, what does this mean? Connor, blah blah blah, and then and I'm like, and
Cool.
I'm all for it. I love answering questions. I love being asked questions because I love researching stuff, and I love maybe I could be a teacher one day.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're a teacher. You've just proven that you're a teacher. You're a good teacher. You mentioned devolution. I'm a young Earth creationist. I believe the whole universe is about 7,223 years old or whatever it is.
I meant political devolution.
I know, but it brings to mind the question,
Okay,
do
right,
you
right,
believe
for sure.
do you believe the stuff and nonsense which is evolution? Do you believe evolution
I
by default or have you looked into it?
I'm not particularly bleeding heart evolutionist, but I do think I think I generally agree because I have maybe a bit of a controversial mindset.
Okay.
I believe in the concept of a divine day.
Okay.
I think it's coincidental. I think it's a really interesting coincidence. The universe is 14 point something billion years old, scientists say, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you divide 14 point whatever by 7, you get 2.4 billion. And a day
Okay.
is 24 hours long, and there's 7 days in a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a divine day is 2.4 billion years. Um, and
Uh,
that makes 1.14 billion years, which is now today. Um, and I just think that is really coincidental how well that math lines up. Um, you know, so and with the Bible, that would literally be true. That Genesis would literally be true. 2.4 billion years, 24 hours. That's a day. 14 billion years, 2.4 times 7, 14 or
Wait.
so billion years. Um, that's exactly God made the
How
universe
did
in a week. It's just
when did this come to you?
uh I don't I think I was just reading Genesis and I was comparing it with science and just or what scientists say and
Uh,
trying to reckon it, and I hit me. I was like, wait. 7 days in a week, 14 billion years. 14 is divided by
Right.
7. You divide the
Yeah.
exact amount of years, it's 2.4 billion years, which is 24 hours in a day. I don't know. It makes sense to me.
Interesting, interesting. Well, to be continued. I'll have you back. We'll talk about evolution, creation, and all the Germanic stuff,
For sure.
Anglophile stuff. I want to talk to you about organ music and different kinds, the hurdy-gurdy or whatever you're into. I don't know if you're into the hurdy-gurdy, but we'll talk about all kinds of stuff. It was a joy talking with you. You're a
Likewise.
bright young man, and I guess I'll see you on Twitter. I'll pay attention. I'll start paying attention to what you're.
Thank you.
What
I
you're
hope
tweeting.
so. Maybe I'll send you that thread about the plaid. That might be
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. Send that to me, and God bless you. And just so you know, as a parting gift, I always enroll all my guests in a perpetual mass. So you're getting the graces of the mass all day, every day. You and your family, living or deceased, any parents, siblings, and whatever. So,
Amazing.
and any spouse that you might happen to marry anytime.
Well, thank you.
So please pray for me and mine, and we will talk soon. Okay?
Okay. God bless.
God bless you. Thanks for coming on. Bye bye.